So making selects is the process of refining your timeline so that you're cutting out all the garbage, all the stuff that you're not going to be using, and only keeping potential clips that you will use in your edit. Typically, the way that I like to do this is to create a new timeline for each day or major event of the project, throw all of my footage into that timeline, and start to cut it up. I cut out all the garbage, keep only the good stuff, and that way I have all of the best clips from that one day or event in one timeline grouped together, and that way I'm able to quickly navigate through that entire day's worth of footage without having to constantly watch the stuff that I know I'm not going to be using. This is a very important step in the editing process, and this is the step where you start to get very familiar with all of your footage. I personally love the process of making selects because it allows me to get really familiar with my project and all of the media that I'm going to be using. All right, so now that we have an understanding of how the cut tab works, let me show you guys how I would make my selects in here. So the first thing I do whenever I'm making my selects is I create a new timeline for each day or event of the project. So in this case, we have one of the days here, longboard day 2, and I'm going to create a new timeline just for this one specific day so I can make my selects in that timeline. So I'm going to hit Command N to make a new timeline, and I'm going to call this the same name as the folder we have here. So I'm going to call it 210806. That's the date, and we're going to call it dash longboard day 2. I'm going to make sure use project settings is selected right here, and I'm going to press create. And we can see that we are back in the root folder in the media pool. And what I'm going to do is just take that timeline, drag it into timelines just to keep things organized. Now I can go back into my video folder, go back into longboard day 2. So the first thing I want to do before dragging all of my clips into my timeline is to make sure that they are organized in chronological order. So the way that we can do that is to go up here and choose how we want things to be sorted by. So I'm going to click clip name, and that way everything is organized by clip name. Now I can Command A, select everything in here, and I can either press 6 or just drag it into my timeline. So by pressing 6, I've inserted all of those clips, and now I'm ready to start making my selects. So the shortcuts that I like to use for making selects are 1, 2, 3, and Q, W, and E. Now, 1, 2, 3 allow me to navigate my timeline forwards and backwards. 1 is to play back my timeline in reverse, and if I keep pressing 1, it's going to play back faster and faster in reverse. Same thing goes with 3. 3 is to play back forwards, but the more I press it, the faster it's going to play back forwards. So I press 3 once, we can see it's playing back at 1x. I press it again, we can see under the preview window we have 2x. If I press it again, 4x, 8x, and then whenever I want to stop, I could press 2. 2 is basically like an alternative to the space bar. So I could press 2 to start, and then I could press 2 to stop. And I could do the same thing with 1, so I'm playing it backwards. I could press it again, 2x speed backwards, 4x speed backwards, etc., etc. So 1, 2, and 3, very important shortcuts to navigate my timeline. So next up we have Q, W, and E. Now W allows me to split the selected clip. So if I have a clip selected in my timeline here, I press W, we can see that it cut it wherever the playhead is. I'm going to Command Z that, undo. So next to W, we have E, and E allows us to trim the clip to the right of the playhead. So if I have this clip selected in my timeline, and let's say I don't want everything to the right of the playhead for this clip, I can select E, and it will ripple delete everything to the right of the playhead for that selected clip. And what ripple delete means is it not only deletes the clip to the right of the playhead, but it also deletes the gap that would have been left over between those two clips. So it kind of pushes everything back over so there's no gaps left in between the clips. Now Q is the same thing, except it deletes everything to the left of the playhead for the selected clip. So let's say I'm scrubbing through my timeline here, and I don't want the start of this clip. I think that it's unnecessary. I don't like how he walks through the frame there. So I can just hit Q, and it's going to delete this section of the clip that's selected. Just like that, we've ripple deleted that first section of the clip. So that's a shortcut to ripple delete any clip that's selected in your timeline. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. And the last shortcut that I use all the time in the cut tab is S, and that is the Ravenclaw keyboard shortcut for ripple delete. So if there's ever a clip that I just don't want, I can just hit S, and it not only deletes the clip, but it also deletes the gap that would have been left over between the clips and pushes everything over. And for me, these are the shortcuts that allow me to make my selects so fast in this page. And let's go to the beginning. I'm going to show you guys how I would actually cut down this group of clips. So I'm going to press play to start previewing, 3 to move forwards. And we can see this first clip's kind of useless, so I'm just going to ripple delete it by hitting S. I'm going to press 3 to move forwards. This could be a good moment for like BTS to show how early we started. So I'm using 3 and 1 to navigate the timeline, 2 to pause, and I'm going to hit Q to cut the start of that. Let's move forwards. I probably only want like a small portion of this. I'll hit 2 to stop there, and I'll just delete the end of this clip. And just like that, I've isolated my favorite moment from that longer clip right here. I'm going to hit 3 to move forwards. And this is an interesting clip. I think it could work well for the behind the scenes portion of this video, but I only want to keep a small section of it. So I'm just going to isolate this little section here by cutting the ends off. And this is the same thing, lots of BTS stuff. Don't know if I'm going to use any of this. I like this part here where it shows Bryn holding the Ronin. So I'm just going to cut everything before that moment by pressing Q, hit 2 to play, and then cut the last part of this as well, E. Okay, so now we got a little moment right here. I'm going to cut the end. I like this part here. I'm going to isolate this, so I'm just going to hit W to cut out this first section, and then I'm going to keep going through the rest of this clip to see if there's anything else that I could use. Yeah, there's good moments here. That's a cool moment. We could just isolate that. I'll hit Q to delete the start of that. We don't need anything there. 2 to stop. W to, again, cut out this section of the clip and keep it. It's a cool moment of him walking with the board. So I'll Q, ripple delete the first part of that. And I'll just isolate that section again. Hit 3 to move forwards. And maybe I'll keep another part of this. Maybe I want that part where the guy scoots by. So I'll just hit Q to delete the start of that. 2 to play. And we will just isolate that one little section right there. And I'll just play back through the rest of this clip quickly. Okay, there's another moment where they hang out here. I'll hit Q to delete the start of that. 2 to play. Cool. There's that one little genuine moment. That's cool. E to cut the end of it. So we can see that we've successfully managed to trim out 4 usable clips from this one long clip, but we deleted all the parts that we know we wouldn't want to use. So that is really the process of making selects. We're refining our footage. We're deleting all the stuff that we don't want and really only keeping the stuff that we could potentially use. So over here, we have a cool moment of Bryn kind of directing the crew here. He's telling them what to do. That's a cool BTS moment. I'm just going to isolate that. So I'm going to hit W to isolate this first section of the clip. And I'll keep playing forwards, hit 3. All right, there's another moment. I feel like that could be cool. I'll delete the start of this here. Press 2 to play. 2 again. I'll isolate that section. 3 to play back forwards. I don't like the rest of this clip, so I'm just going to ripple delete it. So I'm going to continue doing this for the rest of my timeline. I'm going to delete all the garbage and try to only keep the good stuff that I could potentially use. And once I'm done this timeline, I'm going to do the exact same thing for every other major event or day of the project. In this case, it's all days. So I'm going to make a new timeline for each day of the project. I'm going to make sure to bring that timeline into the timeline folders. I'm going to bring the footage from each folder or day of the project into its corresponding timeline, make my selects in there. And then once I have my selects for every single day of the project, I'm going to refine them even more. And then it's time to start piecing together the main edit. So obviously the process of making selects for every single folder in this entire project is going to take a while, but this is important to do so that you get familiar with all the footage. And for me, during the process of making selects, that's where I come up with a lot of my ideas. So if you're taking a project seriously, I highly recommend that you go through the process of making selects yourself and you get familiar with all the clips, you find the parts that you want to use, and you organize your timelines in this way. So when the time comes to actually piece together your main edit, you can very quickly access your best clips from any day of the project. Let me show you guys what my selects timelines look like once they're completed. So I'll go into the original project file over here. And just ignore a lot of this. Things might look crazy right now, but don't worry about that. I'm just going to go into my timelines folder. So over here, and I can select any day over here. So we'll do the same longboarding day that we were working on in the other project. So longboard day 2. I double click into that and we can see that I have all of my best selects from the entire day right here. They're all cut up. And this way I'm able to very quickly scrub through my timeline and get to the best parts of that day without having to view all the unnecessary parts of the clips that I'm not going to be using. Now we can see in this case that I've dragged certain clips up to the second track, and this is something that we'll be learning about later on once we're refining our selects in the edit tab. But this is another great way to separate the clips that stand out even more in your selects, to isolate them here. So all of these clips at the end right here are actually this second layer of clips condensed to the end of this timeline, which we're going to be learning how to do later on. But for now, I just want to give you guys an example of what a finished selects timeline looks like in this project. And because I went through the process of making selects for every single day of this project, I can very quickly go to any one of these timelines and access those selects. Later on, once we get to the edit tab, you'll see how you can lay out your timelines down here in a way that will make it very easy for you to start piecing together your main edit. Essentially, what I do is I isolate all the best selects from each day, put all those into one timeline, stack that timeline on top of another timeline, which is going to be the main edit, and I can simply just drag clips from my main selects timeline down to my main edit timeline and work like that. It's the best way to put together an edit, in my opinion, and it's how I've been putting together all of my most recent videos, and it's the method that I'm going to continue to use. So I'm excited for you guys to learn that exact process.